will now call tonight's meeting to order. First action is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve.
Sure. Any discussion? Tessa, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Orloff,
Yes.
Commissioner McKusick,
Yes.
Commissioner Wade,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moore.
Yes. Agenda is approved. We will move to consideration of the minutes from the June 26th Planning Commission meeting. Are there any amendments to these minutes?
I have a couple of amendments, under the approval of agenda. Item number one, under the vote, Sinclair was absent and came late and was not a part of that vote. He is listed as, voting. A on that. The second, correction I have is under the second consideration of meetings for May 22nd, 2025. Sinclair was also absent on that one. And, I did not abstain. I voted, to approve the motion. So if you'll make those changes for it. Great, thank you.
Any other amendments to the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Motion to approve this agenda, amended. Second.
Any discussion? Tessa, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner McKusick,
Yes.
Commissioner Wade,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Orloff,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moore.
Yes. We will now move into public comment. This portion of public comment is for items that are not laid on tonight's agenda. If you are requesting to speak to a public hearing item, these comments will be considered during that item. If you have a comment that you would like to make related to an issue that is within the purview of the planning commission, you're welcome to speak at this time. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment on an item that is not on our agenda? Do we have anyone online?
Hand is not out. Phone number ending in 3169.
Hello. Hello.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Should I begin?
Yes, please.
Who's speaking, please?
Yeah, I'm making public comment.
Could you please provide your
Okay,
name,
so,
the address first?
yeah, okay. Well, good evening. I'm Hans Lindstrom, 239 West Tanana Avenue, Cannon Beach.
Excuse
I'm
me,
speaking
excuse
in
me,
opposition to,
Hans, were you gonna be speaking
pardon?
on some ordinance amendments tonight? Hans, were you gonna be speaking on the zoning ordinance amendments this evening?
I'm speaking in opposition to ZO 2502.
Right, okay,
Okay, so
we will get back to you shortly. Right now, we're in the public comments testimony, just in general. So we'll be right with you when that item gets on the agenda.
Okay, do you want me to just sit aside and just wait till you call on me, or what do you want me to do?
Yes, please wait. We'll call on you after we call the item to order.
Okay, so I can listen and then you'll call. You'll let me
Yes.
know when to start. Okay, thank you.
We will be moving on to the first item on the agenda. This is a type 4 legislative hearing regarding ZO 2502 proposed text amendments to Municipal Code Chapter 17. ZO 25-02, City of Cannon Beach request for housing related zoning ordinance text amendments to Chapter 1704, definitions, 1730, residential moderate density zone, 1732, residential medium density zone R2, 1740, limited commercial zone, 1760, general requirements and regulations, 1768, off-street parking, 1770, design review, 1772, 080, accessory dwelling, and new section 1760, 200, public benefit dwelling owner occupancy requirements. The zoning text amendment request will be reviewed against the criteria of the municipal code, section 1794-060A, amendments criteria, and statewide planning rules. This legislative hearing to amend the municipal code is being held after providing written notice of hearing and proposed amendments to the code to DLCD in compliance with ORS 197-610. In addition, ORS 227-186 requires the city to provide written notice of amendments and hearing to owners of real property when the city proposes to amend or adopt this code in a manner that limits or prohibits land uses previously allowed in the affected zones. Notice of this hearing has been provided to parties entitled to notice as required by those statutes. Type 4 actions are made by the city council's adoption of an ordinance. Cannon Beach Municipal Code 1714-050C provides that type 4 actions shall be decided by the city after public hearing. The city council may also request that the planning commission hold a public hearing in advance of the city council hearing to consider the proposal, public testimony, and provide a recommendation. The city council has requested that the planning commission hold a public hearing in advance of the city council's hearing to consider the proposed amendments, public testimony, and provide a recommendation. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter? Do we have a staff report?
Turn now over to Marcy and let her go ahead and start the presentation.
Robert, are you gonna bring the presentation up, or should I leave it?
Yeah.
Sorry, the login to. I just signed in by saying.
Yeah.
What do you got that? Recording in progress. Do I? Okay, I think I'm done. So sharing this presentation. Hello, everyone. I'm Marcy Kelly. And can you hear me okay?
No.
I'm Marcy McAnally. I'm with HerbsWorks, and I've been working with the Joint Commission on the Code Rewrite project for a while now. And this is the culmination of a year's worth of work. So I'd like to go through what the packet consisted of, some of the background. Next slide. So this is an effort of the Cannon Beach Code Rewrite project, and the rewrite project is implementing recommendations of the code audit, which was a project that we completed a while ago, a couple of years ago. The tasks that we've completed so far that are part of the project involve amendments to comprehensively reorganize the code. That was one of our first tasks that was adopted. Draft and adopt amendments for a wetland overlay, and that was adopted. And then we launched into a policy related effort around housing that was intended to lead to the code amendments you have in front of you. So we conducted a public housing survey, we formed a housing work group, and we held a housing work group charrette, and now we pair with to forward the housing related code amendments. The housing work group consisted of people that were appointed to work closely with me on these amendments. And they include Lisa Kerr, Brandon Ogilvie,
Chet Moritz, Mike Bates, Michelle Valgura, Eric Ostrander, and Jay Orloff. And city staff, Steve and Robert, were always there, and I facilitated a number of meetings with this group. But I'd like to go back in time to the housing survey that we conducted in early 2024. This was a citywide survey in English and Spanish. We received 281 responses in January and February of 2024, which is kind of an astounding response rate for a city the size of Cannon Beach. We found that 80% of our respondents live in Cannon Beach, 60% of them own their own homes, 36% rent, and 4% have some other arrangements. 78% of respondents work, 5% of respondents own a business in Cannon Beach, and the average household size was 2, and that was just information about the respondents. When they were asked to respond to some specific housing related questions, we found that 81% of respondents, or 243 in number, say that they agreed with the statement that Cannon Beach is failing to live up to its policy to encourage the development of housing which meets the needs of a variety of age and income groups as well as special needs. And this is a statement that's important because it's from your comprehensive plan. And the goal of zoning code amendments is to implement the comprehensive plan, among other things. We also found that 89% of respondents, or 243 people, agreed with the statement that there's a lack of affordable housing in Cannon Beach. And affordability is defined as housing that requires households to spend less than 30% of their income on housing. That's a national definition for affordability, found on the Housing and Urban Development website, or defined by HUD. So, and some additional background has recently been verified for us by work we've done with the Clatsop County. Clatsop County recently completed a buildable lands inventory and housing capacity analysis for all of the cities in the area as well as the county land itself. And the graph here shows, or these series of pie charts on this poster show the Cannon Beach amongst all of the cities that have an issue with vacant homes for seasonal use and short-term rentals has the most. So what you see in the small circle at the bottom that represents
Has the most what?
has the most vacant seasonal housing and short-term rentals. So blue represents vacant seasonal housing, red represents short-term rentals, and gray represents what's available for permanent or long-term living. And this was done as part of a tracking that was collected from all of the cities about recent permits. So we prepared that graph or that pie chart, but we also were able to track over the last 5 years what sort of housing has been built in each of the jurisdictions by year, by type. When we agreed to go forward after the survey and conduct a charrette, one of the things that we looked at was information that some helpful information that Clatsop County staff and Alyssa Gertler in particular have put together. This information that I'm showing you right now is available on the Clatsop County Housing Dashboard. And as an example, to help people picture what affordability means, this chart represents a family of 2, family of 4, the cost of housing for them in different jobs that are actually real jobs here in the county, and what you would have to earn in order to be able to afford housing, and what that means in terms of area median income and percentages of that. And that was so that we could understand workforce housing affordability versus federally subsidized affordability, and sort of more fluent in affordability issues. So that was part of the discussion that we had during the multi-day charrette. Out of the charrette, which took place in May of last year, it was recommended that the group continue to work on housing issues that we revisit the public. Can somebody turn on? We revisit the public benefits provision, which was a policy discussion that we started in 2022. That we enable middle housing such as duplexes, cottage clusters, maybe even triplexes. And that we explore how to enable more accessory dwelling units or ADUs. That we conduct a design workshop. This was the charrette. To test middle housing prototypes on prototypical Cannon Beach sites and troubleshoot design compatibility and affordability issues. And we use the design workshop testing to inform our code amendments.
Ma'am,
We also,
I'm sure you guys have been through all this, but
I'm
I
sorry,
cannot talk now.
this isn't.
I see, all right.
We also agreed to pursue other actions with Clatsop County, such as that data collection that I was showing you. And also the Lease to Locals pilot program, which is starting because everyone understands that we can't address housing and housing shortage in Cannon Beach and the county without looking at things beyond zoning code amendments. But zoning code amendments are a really important part of this job, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So I thought it would be interesting to share some of the slides from the housing charrette, so you could see that what we talked about during that period of time. And just as a reminder, even at the charrette, I needed to tell people that we had talked about public benefits proposal before, which was a concept developed by Jeff Adams before he left. That we moved further forward, where we would use the floor area that's available on a site to incentivize different public benefits, such as things that were under discussion in those days was preserving trees, saving an existing building, and also incentivizing additional dwelling. So we looked at downtown sites as well, and that has informed the C1 proposal. We looked at different massing proposals and parking, the impact of parking requirements on the housing. And so that's a little preview of the charrette results. If I could go through the amendments now, kind of one by one and just describing what's in them. First of all, the purpose of these amendments is to increase the local housing accessibility to persons who live and work in Cannon Beach. Enable more housing overall, encourage a greater mix of smaller dwellings, make it easier for an applicant to get a permit for an ADU or a duplex, encourage and incentivize long-term tenure housing and more variety of housing. And to go back to that quote from the comprehensive plan, to encourage the development of housing which meets the needs of a variety of age and income groups, as well as special needs. So starting at the top of the amendments, these are the contents of the amendments package. First, the first proposed amendment is the creation of a public benefit dwelling owner occupancy requirements. It's a new section in Title 16 that did not exist before. And it will entitle public benefit dwellings to receive the benefits described in the land use districts amendments, which follow. To move then into the zoning, Title 17, we, starting with Article 1, Introduction and General Provisions, we amended accessory dwelling to state that they are not eligible for short-term rental licensing. And definitions to duplexes clarify that they can be attached, stacked, or detached configurations, since that wasn't clear before. And this is compliant with Oregon revised statutes for housing. And we also defined public benefit dwelling there. So those were new definitions introduced to Article 1. In Article 3, the land use districts, we effected changes in R1, or 17.30, and R2, 17.32, and I'm going to summarize them here. We reduced the permitted floor area ratio, or FAR, to 0.46 for one unit and 0.50 for duplexes, exempting accessory dwelling units from FAR, permitting public benefit dwelling in R1, and reference the new requirements in Title 17, which I just read to you. to permit public benefit dwelling and public benefit duplex dwellings in R2 and reference the new requirements in Title 17 public benefit definition. Establish the new allowance for public benefit dwellings, including dormer square footage, floor area ratio exemption, a reduced setback, and tree code relief. Each of these are described more fully in the track change documents that follow. This is just a summary. We deleted the requirement for design review. We state that new dwelling units are not eligible for short-term rental licensing. And then for the land use district article in Article 3, the land use district C1, section 17.4, we amended this section to incorporate some modest housing related amendments that were identified by the housing charrette and apply these to a testing area that's limited in area defined as lots with street facing property line on North Spruce Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. And also adding short-term rental prohibition on new housing and a requirement for these units to meet public benefit requirements. And then we approached the development standards. There was a one-off section in 17.60 that had duplex standards that were not consistent with state requirements, and that those will be deleted. When we got to parking, 17.68, we amended off-street requirements for duplexes and ADUs. And they are, duplexes are reduced from 2 spaces per dwelling unit to 1. And for ADUs, were reduced to none. And then we made amendments to development standards design reviews as Article 4, Section 17.70. We proposed to eliminate the design review requirement for accessory dwelling units, eliminate the requirement for architectural model, update the term modular home to align with state guidance and model code regarding prefabricated and modular housing or manufactured housing, which is mostly just a name, a terminology change. We proposed to amend the entire design review to comply with state requirements for clean and objective design standards for housing and eliminate the design review requirement for accessory dwelling units. Okay, so I think I'm getting close to the end, yes, and the last section then was accessory dwelling unit, 17.72.080, striking the requirements for design review, striking the reference to required parking, since parking requirements are covered in 17.68, and as I mentioned before, there is no parking requirement for an ADU any longer as proposed. And striking other provisions that do not comply with the state ADU requirements. Also stating that new accessory dwelling units or substantial conversions are not eligible for short-term rental licensing. And then there was a table included in this document to help understand for R1 and R2, 2 separate tables to help lay out the types of dwelling options, the way that the floor area ratio applies, the public benefit allowances, if there are any, the maximum square footage that would be possible for that type of development scenario, and any bonus or floor area ratio or ADU bonus that would be available. And I'm not going to go over that, but it's in the packet, and I recommend reading it because it helps explain how these amendments would actually work on different types of dwelling. Yes.
Thank you, Marcy. Just for the record, I don't believe we already got your address. So if you could provide that on the record, that'd be great.
Marcy McAnally, 3845 Southwest Condor Avenue, Portland, Oregon.
So for the rest of the commissioners, I propose that we hold questions for Marcy until after we've taken this morning. Is that acceptable? Okay. I know we received some additional correspondence. Have we gotten a copy of everything that we have, Robert?
Everything through close of business administration.
Perfect. Okay, thanks, Robert. I will now be calling for public testimony. This is a legislative hearing, so the quasi judicial disclosures do not apply. As such, the planning commission will now commence with testimony. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state your full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify who you represent. Because we have a full house tonight and we want to give everyone an opportunity to testify, I will be limiting testimony to no more than 3 minutes. And Robert, are you set up to time?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. When your time is up, I will give you a signal. Understand, I'm not being rude, but we are trying to keep moving through. Please raise your hand if you would be interested in testifying.
You have Mr. Lindstrom online.
Should we do everyone the person first and then take him? Let's do that. Eric? Yep.
No use this thing. Okay, my name is Eric Ostrander, PO Box 97. I was, as Marcy stated, I was part of the group that helped craft a lot of this stuff. I kind of want to give a little quick background on why I joined and what my goals were in terms of joining this committee. And don't think I'll have time to explain how my goals were met or not met throughout it. But 3 main reasons why I volunteered to join this task force or this group back in February of 2024 was I saw friends and neighbors being pushed out of the places to live, either with accelerating prices of rent or the purchase prices of homes or conversions of into STRs or vacation homes. I was seeing a consistent trend of larger homes going in to replace modest sized homes that had been existing for decades in here. Older cabins being replaced with more modern, larger style homes that were lot line, maxing out the FAR that we currently have. All of this reducing the village character and endangering the charming small scale cabin development that's part of the look and feel of Cannon Beach that's referenced numerous times throughout our comprehensive plan. Jeff Adams presented a graph that I had a ton of difficulty finding. I still haven't been able to re-find it again, but it was showing the average size of homes built over the past 50 years or so, and how they stayed relatively stable up until about the last decade, and then there was a sudden acceleration in the size of homes being constructed. And that again goes back to the comprehensive plan of the small scale buildings that are kind of getting left behind, leaving us in a position where we may be losing the character that the Cannon Beach has, the reason many of us came to live here and the reason many people come to visit. The 3 main goals that I had, and we started off the task force going in prior to the charrette, I had 3 main goals. I wanted, in my mind, to increase density in town, but not just density overall, density specifically of people living in town, which just typically ends up being smaller structures closer together on lots. I wanted to look at encouraging multiple dwellings on single lots with residents occupying it while discouraging large single dwellings that sit empty the majority of the year. Encourage and discourage, not prohibit or require. I wanted to reduce parking requirements. I've seen this said numerous times. I think Alyssa Gertler mentioned it, that we have affordable parking development, but not affordable housing development going in, not just in Cannon Beach, but across the state and across the country. In general, in town, it's not residents who create parking and congestion issues. It's typically day trippers that are coming down. Reducing parking on residences where people are living, in my opinion, will have a negligible total effect of congestion within town. I wanted to encourage new construction to be permanent residents, either long-term rentals or owner occupied. And I wanted to see a reduction of the restrictions in the downtown area on housing to encourage more mixed residential commercial development, similar to what Whitebird Gallery and Bruce's Candy Kitchen has. I don't think this document is perfect. I think it still needs the public input that we're receiving tonight, and hopefully we'll continue receiving. When I started this, I advocated for this to be a public process to start with, just as Marcy had proposed with a public charrette and all of that stuff. It's unfortunate that we didn't fulfill exactly that, but I think I want to hear as much public input as possible to increase the affordability in Cannon Beach, and I hope we don't get stuck on the DFAR discussion. Sorry. Thank you.
Anyone else? Chuck?
Everything Eric has said, sure. Michelle Lavender, PO Box 719. I'm here as a member of the Housing Focus Group. I've said it from the start, and I'll say it again, the group was felt unbalanced from the beginning. Originally, Marcy suggested that we have a public charrette, meaning the collaborative process to create a design or a plan for a specific issue. This issue being middle housing. Little side note, middle housing refers to a type of housing, for example, duplexes, triplexes, or cottage clusters, not middle income, which I keep hearing people say. So the group was consisting of all homeowners, some with multiple dwellings that very possibly don't have a clear understanding of what housing insecurity feels like. Not being dramatic when I say my first thought when I wake up, how long I'll be able to stay in my current 390 square foot classic beach cottage that I love with all my heart. Is today the day I find out that I have to move once again. At almost 53 years old, I've never experienced this looming feeling that seems to always be around the corner. While this group is a lovely sentiment and great opportunity to do something for the betterment of our community that relies on so many different kinds of people from different tax brackets and backgrounds that make things run smoothly 365 days a year. The public charrette somehow instantly became private meetings within meetings. I would show up ready to talk about something like parking requirements and then suddenly be talking about the reduction of area in the downtown zone that I was in the dark about. I can only imagine what it feels like at this moment for all the property owners that feel that they're in the dark. I rewatched the February 29th, 2024 joint work session when the focus group was formed on a whim to make sure I wasn't bonkers that we agreed to have an open house design workshop that somehow became private. I know that both me and Eric brought up our discomfort with these meetings not being public several times. If I knew what I knew then, what I know now, I would have insisted. As you can see now, the backlash of the FAR reduction, which we anticipated, people feel left out of the conversation. I'm personally bummed that the other community members that I respect didn't get to see what I remember as an excellent 3-day presentation and Q&A from extremely dynamic and well-versed planning from the city of Austin. I learned so much and I'm heartbroken that no one outside this anointed group had an opportunity to see, and there's no public record, so no most likely in Berlin. I never wanted the housing to be a smokescreen for people to stop building and another way to push NIMBY agendas. The original purpose for reducing FAR was to limit the trend of giant unused homes and try to maintain the cottage feel of Cannon Beach. To follow the comprehensive plan's vision statement that says, the intent of the city, quote, is to plan for a modest level of growth over the next 2 decades. This growth should occur in small incremental steps that allow the community to evolve in a desired direction without disrupting the fabric of life in the community. The fundamental principle of the plan is to foster a community with a strong sense of place where it provides its residents with the quality of life that they desire. I understand that it feels like something's being taken away, and I totally agree that some things seem a little convoluted. That said, back to the comprehensive plan's housing policies, if you look it up on page 18, in order to maintain the maintain the city's village character, its diverse population, the city will encourage the development of housing which meets the needs of a variety of age and income groups, as well as groups with special needs. And then number 3, to the extent possible, the city shall endeavor to accommodate affordable housing in a manner that disperses it throughout the community rather than concentrating on specific locations. Also, the city should recognize that, almost done. That may need to be a balance between employment, housing, in the Cannon Beach area, and the city cannot rely solely on other communities to provide affordable housing. All this said, after working on this group for well over a year, I believe the reduction is far, it's a good thing, but again, I live in 400 square feet. I've read submitted letters and agreed with so many points, for example, Tim's, where it's projecting the city just, it's been 3 minutes. What? 3 minutes, so. I got it for a while. I have like 3 more sentences. How about 1 more? Well, I'd like to pitch that we lean back into the charrette and have it be in public view, and that's it. I guess, thanks. Myself. All right, next.
So my name is Jim Higgs, Higgs, PO Box 461. I know nobody here, so if I say something that offends you, I'm personal. So I have 2 main items. One has to do with this letter that I received that I couldn't comprehend. Okay. I had 2 people call me and they said, I couldn't understand what it means. Okay. So what the heck? You know, something like this that goes out to every person in Cannon Beach should be simple and understandable. So I really have a beef with it. item one. So the second item is that I think it is extremely inappropriate for changes to be made on, establishing new rules for homeowners who bought homes years ago. And now they're being told, oh, we're gonna be making these changes, oh, we're gonna be making these changes. I talked to a couple of people who bought homes recently, and now they're being told that, hey, you know, you're not gonna be able to build this addition. So I've lived here for only a year, however, I've owned my beach home for 35 years. So I've used it for a vacation home for many years. I think there's ways to resolve these kind of problems. You could say, okay, these modifications are gonna be taking place 5 years from now. We're gonna vote them in now, but then won't be implemented for 5 years. So with a little thinking, I think there's ways to address that. But I think it's wantonly unfair the way it's being approached. The second, the other part of this, and I don't know the answer, because I haven't been in. It seems to me like this is really important stuff. I have no idea if it's really important from this letter. And I think it should necessitate every person, every homeowner, having a vote. So I don't know what the commission can do, you guys can do by yourself or not. But I think everybody should have a vote. So there's some things, again, that could be considered in terms of the time delay. You could grandfather people who have current homes, people who buy in the future. If they're told about all these restrictions, then they know coming in. But to go retroactive is like, well, let's establish some retroactive rules. That's what I have to say.
I'm Bob Lundy, my PO box is 1357 Cannon Beach. Pretty quick one, with the exception of the gentleman who just spoke, I would say, I would make a request to people who are speaking to talk more slowly and will understand more of your words, because even with my earbuds functioning as hearing aids, I'm probably hearing maybe a third of what people are saying. Another thing is just for a clarification. I did not read all of what I found on the city's website, but I came to something on the floor area ratio that I at least interpreted as making the floor area ratio 5% of the lot size. And it sounded from something that somebody said earlier. Was there a typo in there that said 0.05? It was really supposed to be 0.5. Okay, that's reassuring. I hope, I think I am at least in a majority, and I think I'm in a minority in living in a neighborhood where I have quite a number of neighbors that live there all the time. And I would like to have more, and I would like to encourage whatever changes you can see a way to push Cannon Beach in that direction. I don't know whether it's when I was sitting where you're sitting, I felt like one of the things that I was there to do was to keep Cannon Beach the way it was 10 years before I came. I don't know whether you're pushing for the same thing, but more power to you.
Anyone else? Tim?
Tim Ramey, PO Box 429, Cannon Beach. So I was at that February 29th joint session that we all were at. remember being asked to sit on this housing committee, or asked if I would like to, and I declined. I said, you know, this is gonna add a year to the process. It's just gonna slow it down. And I probably like to go faster than maybe is even possible. But it's hard to imagine going slower than we are. I think we're over consulted. I think we're over committee. I think we're over analyzed. And I think the people in this room have great ideas, and we could figure this out in a relatively short period of time. This goes back to the code rewrite, which I totally support, but some really mysterious things happen. Marcy has testified numerous times. Duplexes are not subject to design review board review. I'm on the design review board. It's illegal in the state of Oregon. For some reason, political, I don't know why. That's not in this draft. It doesn't make any sense. That needs to go back in the draft. I'm pretty skeptical of the whole concept of FAR reductions for points that have been made here tonight. But I think there's so many better ways to approach this. I mean, if you want to offer incentives to people, don't say you used to have 0.6, but now you have 0.46, but we'll put you back to 0.5 if you do the right things. Now, if the incentive here is to build middle housing, which I think is supposedly the stated goal, going from 0.6 to 0.5 for duplexes is anathema to that goal. It's absolutely wrong, okay? So any kind of reduction in FAR for duplexes is completely wrong. Then if you want to do public benefit, great, make it 0.65, make it 0.7 for triplexes or quadplexes. I don't know if you want those. It's a reasonable question. But to essentially take something away from a property owner and then say, well, I'm going to give it back to you if you do a public benefit is relatively illogical in my opinion. Second, let's make it kind of worth the lift. I mean, this whole concept was, we're going to give you 200 square feet. If you deed restrict your property for eternity, you're going to say 10 years from now, when I sell my house, the only people I can sell it to is somebody that agrees to live here full time. That's ridiculous. No one will do that. No one will do that. I mean, it's just it's a bad business decision. So let's get back to business. Let's figure this out. Nobody wants to do affordable housing more than me, but I think we've moved the ball 0 on affordable housing with this said. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Hi, I'm Catherine Kiddo. My address is 1723 East Beaver Lake Drive in Sammamish, Washington. However, I have owned my beach cabin since 1976. I've been here every summer and fall, as long as I can remember, including when I was 4 years old and first came to the neighborhood. But I have had so many hopes for my poor beach cabin built in 1910. It's falling down. I'm surprised the city hasn't asked me to remove it. But I've been planning a remodel. I'm looking forward to doing it. And this change to the floor area ratio seriously disturbs me. I have owned that property so long. And just as another speaker said, we need some warning and a grace period before you do anything like that, to give us a chance. If I don't even think it's gonna be a problem for me because I have a fairly big lot. But it's a threat. I don't know yet what's going to be built. In any case, I don't understand how reducing floor area ratio when somebody's rebuilding their cabin, how does that help increase affordable housing? Unless my intent would be to make it available for rental. But I don't do short-term rentals, it's a family cabin. So that's an issue. I don't see where you're going with the reduced floor area ratio, at least in the context of rebuilding the house. And I don't want to end up being the smallest house on the street, which is what would happen right now. That's how it is right now. I don't see how the reduced floor area ratio is going to increase density or provide full-time housing for people. Maybe in the context of the duplex or the ADU. But just for somebody remodeling their home, doesn't make so much sense. So that's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Anyone else? Please come on.
We say second thing, or are we done?
If we get everyone done.
Okay.
Andy Stewart's, PO Box 742 in Reach. I've been hearing a lot of things, one about affordable housing. This is a resort town. Everybody knows that. Everybody comes here to visit. People with a lot of money come here to live here. And so what we're talking about here, unless you actually own the stuff and you're willing to rent it out at lower prices, affordable housing ain't gonna happen. It just doesn't work like that. People that live here either buy it outright, or like me, I had to build it myself. I couldn't afford contractors. So I bought land, built it myself. Now we're here. But it just doesn't make sense. You guys keep talking about this, especially this FAR plan. That doesn't make sense to me at all as far as affordable housing. All it does is reduce the square footage of the house. You still have major expense of the property. And you still have major expense of the contractors around here that charge an arm and a leg to build them. So I mean, if you're gonna build a house, you're starting at like 600 grand. You know, for a modest 1,200 square foot home. I mean, that's not affordable housing. You know, and people, like, when you reference affordable housing for HUD, that's like, HUD is low income, super low income areas, and then it just doesn't work unless the city owns it. There's just no way to have affordable housing unless you actually own it here, the city, and they're actually renting it out to people that can afford it. Otherwise, you got people coming in from all over the country, you know, to live here. Because obviously it's beautiful. This is probably, they say, what, it's the top 10 place in the world, beaches or something like that? Do you always have these ads? Anyways, so I think that's basically it. As far as FAR goes, I understand. I like having small homes, big properties. You know, we're on a quarter acre up in the woods. It's beautiful, right? But that's the way we like it. We like cottage views. We've been coming here for, what does I have, for early 70s, you know, so it's just one of those things, you know, that's why we come here. And I'd love it if you guys moved to affordable housing. I don't think that's realistic in this area, right? And I don't like the idea that I can't build I'm restricted if I want to build a garage, right? I want to build a garage. But the idea of having And we haven't even talked about trees. I don't know what's going on with the tree ordinance. Has it been reduced? Because of this, because you guys basically talked a little bit on this, just a little bit. I didn't hear anything what that means. And if there was clarification. Yeah. Great.
Do we have anyone else who wishes to try to click on?
I'm ready for version 2.
Actually, we have someone who
Yeah,
has.
help yeah, no, absolutely.
Diego Heath, PO Box 6. So real quick, I second the person that said they want clarity and notices. My wife and I both have engineering backgrounds, and I'm also a construction builder, so the fact that the letter was confusing to me, sure, it was confusing to a lot of people. So brevity and clarity would be better in future notices. I just want to say I'm for affordable housing, I'm for more parking solutions, I'm for housing for workers. I'm for preserving the character of Cannon Beach. I'm for preserving our natural environment and preserving trees. That's just where I stand. People that have different opinions. We all come from different sides. There's people here that have a business in renting, so they want more rentals. There's people here that just want a really nice vacation home, so they want larger homes. And I know that there's areas that we're not all going to agree, but I think an area that we can all agree is that we need a place to eat. And we need a place for the people that work and maintain the city to be able to live. And full disclosure, I'm Cannon Beach Builders. And what I have seen is a lot of dilapidated homes and a lot of people that can't afford to fix their homes, which degrades the character and the value of our community. And that is because there's no place for tradespeople to live. So I think an area that we can all come together, I don't know all the answers to the solution, but where we can agree is that there has to be a place to house the workforce and house jobs and let even us that have really big homes or small homes be able to not be paying a 3 times premium on every cost of labor. And I say that both as a homeowner and employer. And the other thing I just want to recap real quick is we bought land and moved here in 2016, and we wanted to build a 350 square foot tiny home, and we hit hurdle after hurdle of just wanting to build a small house because the codes were so vague. And now all I see is, and we turned our house to save the huge tree on our lot, and now all I see is all the trees getting cut down, and I see all these huge houses taking up all the lots. And I am a builder, I get it, the more bigger house you build, the more money you make, but I also see from being here 10 years, the bigger the house, the longer it sits empty. So those are just my thoughts I want to share as a part of the community. Thanks.
Do we have anyone else? Yes.
Well,
Actually, we have someone in the back behind. Oh, however.
Randy Neal, PO Box 1092. I'm not a fan of the process that was used, nor can I support some of these outcomes. Changes of this magnitude and consequence should not be such a surprise or a mess. There were major shortcomings in this process. Public meeting protocols are in place to both inform and gather feedback. The group creating these changes should have had published agendas, public meeting schedules, minutes, Zooms. We should be able to do better. There's really been no effort to educate or inform besides this mailing in a mailbox. This is also wrong. Some topics seem supportable, but they're so intermixed with other unreasonable restrictions and concepts that it's really hard to give good input. I came tonight wondering who's going to be in charge. I feel sorry for Marcy to have to explain all of this to our own citizens who put this together. There's several major topics that we've talked about that seem unreasonable. Residential over commercial. Why is this just one half of one block? It's either a viable concept or it's not, and it should apply to all. FAR relief for an ADU doesn't make any sense. You're making somebody undertake a costlier and more complex design. Why would anybody want to undertake that? Requiring a developer or a new resident to become a landlord, again,
doesn't make any sense, nobody's gonna do it. Adding a permanent deed restriction to pass along to future owners, not gonna happen either, it's probably not gonna be enforceable, might not even be legal. I wonder if someone's hoping all the ridiculousness of these incentives just make FAR restrictions pale by comparison so they can slide through. Most of these strategies are aimed at the incoming dreamers who really don't give a crap about our housing crisis. Market forces of supply and demand are just too powerful to be stopped by these kinds of restrictions. In my written package that I submitted, I believe we should be following a community housing trust, community land trust. I ask everybody to go out and look at that. We don't have a capacity problem of middle housing. We have lots of middle housing. It's just it's not affordable for the people who want it. And it's owned by people that don't want to live here. I believe like a community land trust is the way to go. North Coast Land Conservancy preserves our natural spaces. We need something like a community land trust to protect our community spaces.
Do you have anyone else?
I'm not gonna say a word,
That's-
making me over.
Okay.
Am I ready?
Do we have anyone else in the room? Yeah, we want to do the Mr. Lindstrom first.
That's how I see who wanted to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, we are ready for your public
Hello.
comment.
Okay, thank you. Let me know if you can't hear me on the phone. Hans Lindstrom, 239 West Tanana Avenue, Cannon Beach. I'm speaking in opposition to ZO 2502. First, I encourage all Cannon Beach residents to go to the city's website and read the letters from the Cannon Beach residents that oppose these new code amendments. The letters are an easy read compared to the large volume of city information, and you'll get a good perspective on why to oppose these code amendments. Second, the city's purpose for providing housing accessibility, or in other words, affordable housing and rentals, is not realistic in my opinion, with the expensive real estate on both sides of Hemlock. Third, has the city considered other studies or alternatives to try and meet their goals for accessible housing? Fourth, to me, the current codes regulating FARs and ADUs work well and should be left alone. Fifth, I believe the PBD, public benefit dwelling, is not a good idea. I assume any agreement with the city would be recorded on the owner's title. This opens the door to future disputes with the city. Sixth, Oregon Measure 7, a state law, provides for compensation to be paid to owners if their property is taken or values diminished. The new FAR would be 46% versus the current 60%. Again, opens the door to disputes. Lastly, I recognize a lot of work by many has gone into bringing these new code amendments to the forefront. But I believe they do not protect and are not in the best interest of the city's residents overall. Nor do I believe they'll be of much help for the city in achieving their intended purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. There's no one else in the room. I'll let you have.
There's one more online.
Great.
Legal Wickham.
Hi, this is Lila Wickham, and I live at PO Box 208, Tolowana Park, 97145. Affordable housing is key for workers, but it's also key for emergency preparedness. As the Cannon Beach Medical Reserve Corps coordinator, I know that the people who live here are the ones who are going to respond and try to save other people's lives in an emergency. And the fewer of those people there are, the less chance we will have of doing well in an emergency. I have a couple of questions. And the first is, Eric said that there would be negligible impact on parking by decreasing the duplexes. And I'm just wondering what negligible is, because parking is so frustrating in Cannon Beach that how minimal is that negligible impact? I don't know if that question's for Eric or who it's for, but I'm just wondering about the parking.
Hi, this is Melissa Ryan, the city's attorney. I just wanted to clarify for the people who are attending today to give their thoughtful comments. This is the time for the Planning Commission to hear your comments, but it is not the time for you to ask questions of planning commissioners. Thank
Okay,
you.
so then I'll make a comment instead of a question, which is that I really am concerned about parking, and it worries me that the proposal includes decreased parking restrictions, and that will make it more difficult for residents to find parking. And my other one was a question, so I won't ask it because I can see that that's not the right time. But anyway, overall, I really appreciate the people who worked on this. I know how much work it is to do this, how much reading it requires, and how much effort it requires. I do admit that I did have trouble understanding it, and even though I read it a couple of times. And so I don't know if there's a way to make it more clear for people so that they know exactly the implications. And the last thing I would say is that when we built our house in 2007, the FAR had a restriction on the overhang, like over our deck, and it reduced our ratio. And I see that in your proposal that no longer exists. And I applaud that, because I never understood why the overhang on my deck would increase my floor area. So anyway, the bottom line is, thank you for all your work. And if there's an opportunity to get my questions answered, or whatever that venue should be, I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you, Lana. Do we have anyone else online?
No.
Oh, I see someone back.
Okay.
No, wait, we have
So,
someone
yeah,
at
it's-
the back. We have someone. Oh,
Yeah, the towers get them up.
that's right.
Denise Wilson, PO Box 1232. You guys keep talking about affordable housing. During the winter time, the workforce is not being used as much during the winter time. I mean, businesses have summertime ups and they hire people and everything, and then winter time they're down. So to require me or somebody to have affordable housing, I have one unit that I rent and one unit that I live in, and I count on that unit for part of my income. So, and I live here full time, and I just think that when you're talking about affordable housing, you have to realize that you only need affordable housing for half the year. I've actually had people chew me out because workers, felt that my housing wasn't affordable enough. Well, I feel like I don't have to give them a free ride either, which is kind of what they wanted. And, so that didn't happen. But just when you're talking about all that stuff, remember about the people who are using like their Airbnb or whatever to supplement their income. I know a lot of people do. I have a lot of full-time residents on my street. But people do use that to supplement their income. I have to have it. Well, yeah, I have to have it to be comfortable. I could survive without it. And this year, and I don't know if it's what's going on, I've had really a hard time renting it out. So, you know, the prices drop, and all of that is just, I like to rent to people who are working here, but pretty much I rent to people who work in Warrenton or work in New York, or work somewhere else, and they come here to work out of the unit for like 4 months. And then I rent to somebody else who's working, so all of my stuff goes to people who are working. And I'm probably rambling it out now, that's enough. So anyway, when you're talking about affordable housing, what part of the year do you actually need housing for? Because I don't think it's all year round.
I saw someone in the back.
I'm Stephen Day, don't know which address to give you, but, as of May next year, 3216 South Pacific in Cannon Beach.
Yeah.
From Oklahoma. And, we had the same experience of receiving this letter in the mail, and it was a complete surprise, and it was very frustrating to see this level of activity on something that is obviously very important to us, and receive a note, just a couple of weeks before a very important meeting like this. I do recognize the difficulty in running a process like this, and also there's got to be a way to include the stakeholders who really are involved and impacted. Particularly to the previous speaker, online, there has to be a time when these questions can get answered. And we have, there's a lot of questions from the presentation, et cetera, that just haven't been answered. Or maybe you go through so quickly that we lay people can't keep up and ask the questions that we want to. So that's very important. One of the things that I sort of pause at is this notion of all of these huge houses and all of these McMansions. I think one of the official documents actually use the word McMansion. Like, how appropriate is that to reverse condescend against a group of people? And that just doesn't seem like the spirit of Cannon Beach that I grew up with. My father in the 1950s lived above a barn in Warrenton so that he could open a print shop. And on the side, he raised rabbits and skinned them and took them around to the restaurants so that he could make ends meet. That's the nature of this whole community up and down this corridor. People who are willing to work, people who are willing to get what they want because they want to be here. After a 40-year career, my wife and I are going to be here. And we're doing it the way within the current rules. And we have fought for 4 years just to have people agree to the current rules and not poke their finger in our eyes every step of the way. And we've persevered, almost selling the property 3 different times along the way because of the difficulty. Just yesterday, in talking to our contractors, we were talking about a certain issue, and once again, he, who works in this area all the time building, says, well, welcome to Cannon Beach. That's not who we want. That's not it at all. I think the FAR reduction is a misdirect. It's a curveball that's being thrown into somebody's pet peeve that doesn't like the idea that some have more than others. And I sympathize with that growing up the way that I did, and now being able to get what I want. But the real answer here goes back to a couple of different people who spoke earlier, which is the affordable housing issue needs to be addressed. And it needs to be addressed with the power that the city and the leaders in the cities have at their disposal, not to attack the people who actually make the city run and here for whatever reason that they're here, but to do something around expedited permits and around having land trusts and around doing things that actually bring affordable housing to the community.
Do we have anyone else? Never.
Hello, I was not planning on speaking. My name is Brian Stone, address is 141
Southeast 25th Circle, Vancouver, Washington. I am one of the beloved second homeowners here in town. My wife and children and I bought our house in 2018. And we were lucky enough when I could move here due to my job, allowing me to work remote, live here for 2 years from 2020 to 2021. So we have kind of had a fun mixture of being a second home family and a residence family. And required us to go back to the office and come here as often as possible. We purchased here in Cannon Beach because we love it here. We love the community. We love the way it is and has been. I grew up coming here as a kid. And we love for it to stay the same. I understand it's very hard to do the job that this council does, and I also understand that people hate change, so that makes it even harder. With that being said, I work in mortgage lending, so I deal with a lot of first-time home buyers, or people who are struggling these days. And I understand a lot of that plight people go through. With that being said, I think what you see in other states and cities and counties is you will notice a trend where they are seeing the less restriction they put on development, specifically to multi-units and ADUs. The more that development then takes place, because it then becomes cheaper and faster, that will increase your ability to have more long-term rental units. Of course, you have to put a bit of a cap and control on your short-term rentals, which you've done for years, which is great. And I'm coming from a position of luxury where luckily the home that we purchased already had an ADU established in it. So I don't have to go through, and this isn't a plea for me to try and build one. But what I am saying is from my expert opinion in being in the residential world, residential mortgage world, is the more restriction you put on those building codes and these people, and the more red tape you put on the developers and builders trying to build those units, more expensive it is. Therefore, the less affordable your long-term housing is going to be. I don't know how much that all gets thrown into consideration, but sure.
Robert, did we get someone else online?
Yeah, one online. Mary Beth Hogle.
Mary Beth, would you like to provide comment?
Yes. PO Box 492. And I do agree with Lila Wickham that we need more workforce housing in Cannon Beach and more affordable housing, and the two are different. And we need both. ADUs may provide affordable housing. Workforce housing is going to be a little different. Anyway, we do need people who work here in Cannon Beach to live in Cannon Beach, to be able to live in Cannon Beach, because in an emergency, we are going to depend on the people who are present to help with everything that needs to happen. And that is speaking as a community emergency response team person. The other thing that I had in mind to say is that a lot of vacation homes are purchased and financed through short-term rental money. If there was a waiting period before they could be licensed of perhaps like 5 years, that would disincentivize people from buying it mostly as an income stream and investment, and more as a place that they want to live. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mary. Do we have anyone else online? Sure.
This is my first, Lisa Sewell, I'm 139 West Adams. Original build, haven't done anything, or plan to. But my concern is the letter. I saw it, 3 weeks ago, showed it. My husband couldn't come tonight
We are huge supporters of just the community, but I feel like the tree thing is a whole nother issue, which I don't know why so many trees are going down, but that's different. But we thought maybe there should be, if there's a way, email or DocuSign or just suggesting how, this is how many people showed up. It's my first one. I think this is a bigger issue, that's all. I just think it should be, I mean, I'm sorry I didn't see it before, but I'm also like, that letter made me, you know, show up. So I just think, I guess that's just, I know it's a hard job to make us all aware and we're all doing our own thing, but this is a big deal. And I'm not afraid of you, I'm not looking for all that, but I also wanna preserve the people who are. And I do rent it out because if I need a new roof or whatever it is, it's a big deal to be able to keep it up. It's 1915 is when it was built. So anyway, looking at you, it's not you. I'm just saying that you have to get action on that. So thank you. And yeah, I think DocuSign or some kind of way to let everyone know and be part of this. And yeah, affordable housing, I'm all about that too. So maybe Habitat for Humanity, or like maybe there's an area. They're doing that in the area we live in, so. Anyway, didn't have anything prepared, just wanted to say something.
Okay, do we have anyone else? I think it's finally your.
Okay, all right, I'll try not to be, I did this one full time last time, yeah. So, I agree actually with most of the comments that were made, so that's great, and it looks like a lot of effort has gone into getting us to this point. On the other hand, from my standpoint, when I got this letter, I looked at it and said, well, I've got letters like this in the past. They're usually about some kind of street or some kind of block and, oh, it's no big deal. I don't care about it. And then there's a little something that said, oh, I better check it out. So I went down to the planning department, talked to somebody, and then the light went on. Then I understood, holy smokes, this is a big deal. My point is that I think that a lot of people who got this letter, like me, didn't understand the letter. And that's why we don't have very many people here. And of course, it's the summer, that's another issue. But I think that that's pretty germane. I think the issues about the education is also really important. And maybe you guys have done this kind of thing, I just don't know. But the thing that I would envision to be kind of a town hall kind of thing with the planners here. And anybody who wants to come in, you know, for a 2 or 3 hour time period, you come in and just bombard them with questions. Because when I went and talked to somebody who was a planner, I found out in about 1 minute in terms of, okay, this is the germane issue that I need to understand. I didn't get any of that from the letter. So, so I think that that's important. I don't really understand what appears to be, and I know I'm not trying to regurgitate all the history, I don't need to know it really. But I don't understand the need to emulate other towns. I mean, having data that says, well, this is the average and this is this and this is that. In all respect, I'm sure that's what you were asked to do. But it's kind of, who cares? I mean, I want to support people who need homes, okay, but I think we've kind of gone overboard. I mean, vehement difference of opinion in terms of this ratio thing. The ratios, I think, is just a bunch of baloney, completely unfair to people who've already owned homes. And I think that's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll be closing because of public testimony. We'll do that once we close the public testimony portion and then we'll. Promise we're not really supposed to speak. I guess we're supposed to go for it. So how about if you speak your piece? At this time, I'll be closing the public testimony portion and we will be moving to deliberation. Dave, would you like to begin with your comment?
Oh, what I wanted to do, first, so may have not spoken or chosen public comment, but we have a lot of people who have come on to say something they don't, they're going to repeat something that they already heard. But that's.
I think public testimony, they did. Take opportunity, they didn't take everything.
So.
But I will say that I really appreciate everyone's comment, and I also do appreciate the fact that we have received a lot of input in our work sessions. I still remember the session when we had over 50 people come and speak about their different. So I appreciate not only the input tonight, but I appreciate the input that we've had over the many work sessions that we've held. And I also
Vice
do-
Chair, hi, excuse me, Vice Chair, could I offer some explanation in response to some of the comments tonight about the notice and the timing?
This, yeah, it's just moving to that, but if you would like to speak to it instead, that would be fine. That was. gonna be
Sure.
my-
Okay, great, thank you. So I guess if I could just back up, the notice that you received in the mail is brought to you by anyone who voted in the general election in 1998 in Oregon. Because we, the voters, enacted ballot measure 56, which is codified at ORS 227.186, and it's very specific as to the notice that is required to be sent when a development code amendment is under consideration. It can't be sent more than 40 days or less than 20 days before the first hearing on the matter. In addition, the state Department of Land Conservation and Development has its own time frame for when notices of hearings can be sent. Ballot measure 56 also is very specific as to what the notice has to say. And if you open up that statute that I just cited, you will see that the city said exactly what the statute told it to say. So that sort of hopefully takes care of that question. The second thing I wanted to just big picture is that the planning commissioners who are the planning can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
The planning commissioners who are sitting here tonight and online have all been appointed by the city council after applying to be appointed and receiving serious and thoughtful consideration by the city council before they were appointed. And the planning commission is the body under the code that is tasked with considering these amendments. And so they are volunteers and are doing this thoughtful consideration, in that capacity. And so I just wanted to point that out. I think that was all I wanted to say as regarding the majority of the comments, unless you have more that you would like me to address.
Thank you, Melissa. We will definitely let you know if we have questions as we go. I think at this point, it would be helpful if maybe we begin a deliberation over some of our more specific concerns. I do want to say first that this is one piece of the solution that we've been talking about throughout all the work sessions. We have talked about the Lease to Locals program, as Marcy mentioned. The city is considering other options as well, but this is a really complex problem. So I recognize what we're doing here tonight is one piece of the solution, and is certainly not designed to be the entire solution. But I would like to open it up to my fellow commissioners. If you have specific comments or questions you'd like to take up, and we can also ask Marcy questions at this time.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. There was and I'm sorry I can't respond to questions directly. So I'm gonna pretend that I'm not talking to them, but I'm gonna answer the question. And it makes it really hard to do this. I feel like there might be a misconception about what this zoning amendment is attempting to accomplish. Anybody can go and build a duplex at any time, and they don't have the city's fingers in their pockets. I mean, they have to go through the normal process and they can have their duplex built. The public benefit was intended to say, can we come up with a set of incentives? We can argue whether the incentives are the right ones. But a set of incentives that would motivate somebody to want to build a duplex and met certain conditions. So anybody apart from the farm, and I'll get to that, anybody can do whatever they want with their property as they can under the current codes, provided they comply with the code. The FAR thing has been really hard to get our head around, but it's not unique, and what we found was that these bigger houses are in some way contributing to the lack of and I'm gonna use affordable housing broadly. But the kind of housing we want to stimulate, to incentivize. So, whether we hit the targets right or not, I happen to think that, you know, or this, my personal opinion is, not speaking for anybody else. For the zones that we targeted, 46.5% is probably pretty good for what we see. Outside that, if somebody wants to, build under the current code and what that ratio is, that's fine, but what we wanna do is create some density, but also create a situation in this part of the city where, the homes become a little bit more affordable.
Can I ask a question, just for clarification, not to argue?
Sorry, we really are.
I know, and it makes it hard. So the misconception to me was that we were tying anybody's hands, we're not. What we are trying to do is create an incentive for a certain kind of housing, which leaves alone all the other stuff that people wanna do with their housing, with the exception of that bar bonds. Now, well, I don't know, that was the misconception.
But that's not the proposal.
It is.
I have some specific questions about the code, but I think there might be general comments from other commissioners that we welcome first.
I'd like to say that, the reason we're not answering any questions this evening is because we have our own questions, and this is a first run at this. So we welcoming all the ideas, and we're going to deliberate and try and answer these questions ourselves, because a lot of the questions that are being brought to us, thank you, been brought to us this evening are questions that we might have also. This isn't the end all be all, this is the process right now, and, everybody who came this evening, we really appreciate that. And that letter was intended to give people some information, but not all information. No letter can give everybody all the information or answer all the questions. But it should arouse their attention enough to go to the city's website and to attend the meeting this evening. Because this is a process that who knows how long it's going to take, but what we would like to do is keep, in my opinion, the village appeal of Cannon Beach, not have something that's built from lot line to lot line. That leaves room for nature, also when we have a little bit smaller houses. Now, where the property rights start and where the city rights start, with respect to anybody's property, is that gray area where we try and come to some kind of consensus about what do we want to see in the next 10 years for Cannon Beach? What kind of housing do we want to have that will attract people to live here full time, year round? Because that's what really builds a community for me, is to have people live here and to have people involved in processes like these. And what brings me to this area, like so many others, born on the coast, have been coming here forever, is the nature. You know, that's what brings all the tourists here, is the nature, not only the coast, the trees, and the general nature of the area that's so beautiful. Jacques Cousteau back in the 70s was asked, where's the most beautiful coastline that you've ever seen? And Jacques Cousteau responded, the northwest of the United States. So that really says something about Cannon Beach, and once we stop preserving this and it's gone, it'll pretty much be gone forever. Trying to get something like that back, it would be impossible. So this is a collaborative process that not only includes us, the commissioners, but it includes everybody here tonight and everybody else that lives in town. And it will impact us, what we decide going forward with the codes, not only in this meeting, but meetings to come. Is going to be heavily impactful over the next few decades. And we need to think very carefully about what we're willing to give up. As far as, you know, making larger homes and what we want our neighborhoods to look like. So I'm looking forward to deliberation, collaboration anybody who has ideas. And I also agree that affordable housing may not ever come to fruition in Candy Beach. It's a tourist town and, you know, it's going to be expensive. But we can look at maybe other cities, in Idaho, for instance, Sun Valley. They've done some things I know to try and enhance housing for their emergency and first responders, you know, school teachers and so forth. Maybe something like that can be looked at. I know Park City, Utah has also had the problem, pretty much every other resort community. So maybe we can build on some of the things that they've done, or at least extract some ideas and put our own on top of it. Thank you.
Other comments from commissioners?
I have one question for either Marcy or Missy, and that's in regards to Tim's rating. Tim Rainey's comment about duplex not being subject to the legality of that. Is there anything we get an answer on that?
But we have the DLCD letter here in the packet, which indicates that small cities are not, but Missy might be able to speak to that.
I am having such a hard time. Could you repeat your question, Commissioner Orloff?
Yeah, our by Oregon statute, are duplexes not subject to DRB review based on our city size?
Duplexes are housing. And so to the extent that DRB review includes discretionary criteria, they are not subject to that criteria. And it doesn't have anything to do with the size of the city.
Illegal.
So Marcy, I think we had this conversation, we have a DLCD letter in our packet that indicates clear and objective standards imposed by a DRB would still be allowed in a small city for duplexes, but larger cities are not allowed to have DRB review. Is that correct? I feel like we've had this conversation in past work sessions.
It's, I'm not gonna disagree with our land use attorney, because she's an expert. I will say that it's a bit of a fuzzy area. We've reached out for a lot of guidance over the years that we've been working on this. And the DLCD letter does reflect an interpretation, which will become moot as soon as the 2138 passes, because cities will be, duplexes will be required to be not subject only to clear and objective criteria. ADUs right now cannot be subject to design review. But it's a little bit unclear whether duplexes are currently in the city of Cannon Beach's size required to be exempt from design review.
So do you know the status of Bill 2138?
It's now being made into rules that go into effect in 2028. And my proposal to the group was that get ahead of it while we're deleting housing types from design review, to strike duplexes too. But that was, people were concerned about the lack of having clear and objective standards in place, and that's the very next effort as part of this code rewrite project, is to establish clear and objective standards that are administered by staff that would apply to all housing.
So would it be possible, so we would not be out of compliance if we didn't make changes to DRB provisions now, because they're the next thing to be addressed? Because at this point, we're not out of compliance since duplexes are not required to be exempt.
That'd be the way all of my research points, all of my discussion with DLCD.
Great, thanks.
Great.
Anyone else have questions on that point?
Well, I just wanted to say that I recognize all of the effort that went into getting us to where we're at today, but I do appreciate all the comments and feedback that we're getting. That helps us I think that helps inform us of what the community really wants to see. There was a couple of comments about, not just duplexes, but triplexes, quads, higher density type options. Is that something that could be considered in the future?
Yeah,
Is that?
you're asking her, babe, absolutely,
It,
in the future.
the process has been to carry some concepts forward from the housing charrette. You probably remember a long list of housing concepts. And that's one of the concepts, what we have tried to present here tonight is what we think are doable as adoptable amendments now, and that remains a concept for consideration in the remaining code rewrite project. More community discussion would probably be needed.
But it's, and again, just my opinion, it's my impression that what has been provided to us is a framework that can be tweaked easier than starting all over again. So if you have duplexes, and I think I recall some of the discussion, you know, triplexes and quads, you know, they were out there, but, you know, we were concerned about people who didn't want a lot of changes. So we thought, okay, can we manage this? And then if somebody needs to in a future date, easily with the framework, amend it and add triplexes and quads. Now, they're already zoned, they're already permitted in the zones. Again, nothing that I'm aware of changes that, right? I mean, we still, triplexes or, cluster housing is still permitted, where it was in the code before, it's right in there. You know, we're not stopping that anyway.
I guess adoption for a duplex with an ADU would be maybe a version of.
Yeah, if it turns out that that's what the demand is pushing, yeah.
I just, you know, there just were a lot of good ideas that were floated, in the written comment as well as in the verbal. You know, obviously there's things that this could continue on for some period of time. And so I think it's important to understand that this is a document that's gonna be ever changing. We're not gonna be cast in stone necessarily at this point.
But we don't know that, we don't know what happens, we have no idea.
You know, it's a best effort on the part of, you know, a good group.
You know, it would be great, the hearing closed, so it's just deliberation out, you heard the hearing portion.
Well, I have to say.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Higgs, you had the opportunity to speak, and now it's time for the planning commission, so thank you.
Part of the problem is.
Mr. Higgs, please.
Thank you, Steve.
Marcy, I had some specific questions, do you mind? So 1760-200 is the definition for the public benefit dwelling. And I think I am still confused about the language and how, if we were to read this language, it would indicate that a dwelling can be rented and that still counts as full-time residency. So I am seeing, what sole dwelling unit shall remain occupied as the principal residence of the title holder. Do we need to add something saying, or dwellings may be rented for periods exceeding 12 months? In other words, we would take clause 1, add an or, and join that with clause 3.
So clause 1 says, once sold to the initial buyer, the dwelling unit shall remain occupied as the principal residence of the title holder receiving the public benefit housing allowances. Part 3 is dwellings may only be rented for periods exceeding 12 months and are not eligible for short-term rental licensing. And you're saying it would be, it's not clear.
Because if it says that must be occupied as the principal residence of the title holder, I feel like we should also say, or may be rented for periods of more than 12 months. So that it doesn't sound like it must be occupied by that owner at all times. I'm just worried that a literal interpretation might not end up in the correct result.
I agree with that.
So maybe we just come back with some proposed language to clarify that.
So is this the time to discuss the public benefit dwelling occupancy requirements and whether or not
This is the time.
we even want to be in the business of policing a deed for years and years and years, and to go and make sure that the occupant is also the deed holder and make sure they have the proper ID and that it matches the deed. And I feel like that this is going to go down the road that I'm not sure that we want to go down, in perpetuity. I understand what we're trying to do here by, you know, helping people or giving people incentive to live here and be part of the community full time. But I also think that this could be an area that the city may not want to police. Also, I think there probably should be an exception for family members of the deed holder. And then we get into the definition of what's a family member, and do they have to be married or can it be a partner? And does a cousin count? And those types of things. I think that this could open up more trouble than it's worth. And there may be different ways of creating public benefit dwelling and occupancy than creating a deed restriction. And
What would be your alternative idea?
well, I'll go back to, if the housing was a little more affordable here, then we of course had probably more people in the community.
Particularly here.
Right, so you know, there are a lot of issues here that don't have an easy solution. I'm just thinking out loud that this deed restriction, especially if you're trying to sell the home down to, you know, a decade from now, policing that again, requiring that somebody live there, may also reduce the value of that home. Of course, the flexibility that the owner has. I don't have a solution right now, but I think this opens a lot of can of worms going forward. I mean, I guess we could do inspections on it, similar to the inspections we do on SDRs from time to time to make sure the person living there is also the deed holder, but this sounds like a lot for the city citizens.
We kind of went through that. I'm gonna volunteer for everybody, even though I'm not counting this. I was on the committee. All right, so if anybody wants to know, then it's no problem. Or at least seem to have some information. I don't think anybody wants the deed restriction per se, but how do you enforce something? We worked with, the city and, you know, but those objections came in. And we kind of got in the spot where we felt like with most things here, you get to 80%, 90% enforcement, that you just don't touch everything, right? And we felt like everything else, it's probably a win. So, you know, if this will develop with time a lot, this proposal, and through this process. You know, if we could come up with a set of incentives that put a lot of cash in somebody's hand and didn't want to say no to it. And then just got it back on a prorated basis when they sold it. That would be one thing to do, but there's some policy issues here that we need to, does the city want to set aside funding to create in this environment, the kind of incentive you need to overcome the issues that, you know, people brought up about this being a vacation community, right? I mean, there are things we can do, but they're not things that planning commission can decide. What we can decide is right now, but we can tax vacant homes. The state's now coming down with legislation to allow cities like ours to tax vacant homes. We could create a fund where we could go out and give lots of money to a handful of people who are gonna create housing. And if they have to sell it because they see a cash opportunity, it's too good to pass up, get the money back to the central. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but all we want to do is get a framework in place. So as the city decides those policies, then they will come out and right away, they have that framework to plug into. So yeah, a deed restriction, it's not ideal. Nobody wants that, but that's all we have right now. We could have other things.
And again, it's only if someone chooses to take advantage.
Right.
So it's not as though every new homeowner must do this, but it might be a very carefully considered option for some people.
And
So I think to me,
that's the thing we need to try.
it's a menu. This is one piece that says, here's one way that we might.
there will be the policy options, there might be at least a voting program, and so some people might take it, but it's not going to require people to come in or to have deed restrictions.
And to respond to the question that came up, you know, streamline process, yeah, that could be part of it, right? I mean, what, Marcy was saying is, our code, our design guidelines are inadequate for what we need to do. Let's fix it, and in that, you could say, hey, build something that looks like this, you're fast track. You know, there's a lot we can do, but we need to get a framework in place to allow the city to grow.
Looking through if I have other questions first. I had a couple typos I'll just send to you separately maybe, that you may have already found. I know there were some questions on the reduction of landscaping requirements for the C1. I know C1 is just a test case. That's why we have that limited area. It wasn't clear to me, so what is the new landscaping change from what was required for C1? I can find that those sections. I'm just looking for we should have been. So it says, right now, what's required on C1 is a minimum landscaping border of 3 feet between the sidewalk and frontage of all buildings facing the street. I'm reading language that's currently in your code. Okay. The planning commission may grant exceptions to the standard for doors and entries to buildings or where a combination of seating and landscaping is provided. Such landscaping may be part of the required landscaping specified in section 17.70.10.110. Just as a reference, examples of what we are trying to make possible would be like at Bruce's Candy Kitchen or something like that, where there's not landscaping there, but there's a bench instead. So what we added here to make it possible to, because what we found in our study during the charrette was that additional setback for landscaping actually prevents from having some housing, not that only, but parking requirements, all these other things just crimp down the potential development area. And it's not especially in character with your main street to have that landscaping. In fact, there are a lot of exceptions to it. So we wrote in lots with a street facing property line on this area, this test area, are exempt from the 3-foot border between sidewalk and building frontage. Instead, landscaping requirements may be met with a combination of benches, walkways, seating, and landscaping distributed across the entire site and including vertical landscaping such as green balls. And so design review would still be improving that alternative, but they're no longer required to have a 3-foot. Right, okay.
Marcia, one of the things that I wanted to make sure I was clear on, the language in the proposed language talks about accessory dwelling specifically, whereas in the past, I was more used to hearing the term ADU. Are those still pretty interchangeable?
Yes, they're interchangeable.
Okay, and is there still the 600 square foot max
Yes,
for an accessory dwelling?
yes.
Okay.
Seems like the big sticking point is the FAR reduction, at least, from the public comment. So does it, Mike or Marcy, you both being part of the charrette, if we eliminate that proposed amendment and just keep it at 0.6, does it make both sides unhappy? Do we still, it doesn't seem like there's been any pushback to any of the other proposals, or at least meaningful pushback. So do we get to a point tonight where we could say to the city council, everything's a go except for the FAR reduction? Otherwise, we will just continue to spin our wheels and get nothing done and have more meetings. And so is that something does that just destroy the entire intent of the charrette? if we leave it at 0.6 and go forward with everything else. I mean, I've been saying for years now, and will continue to say, that the city should get more involved in building affordable housing or workforce housing or both. I think we need to build a larger building on city-owned land, South Wind, the RV park potentially. So this, do we just keep spinning our wheels if we have more meetings on this and get nowhere? Or could we leave here tonight with some way to to give guidance to the city council that we think this is a go, except for the FAR reduction?
Erin, I'm not sure how you envision that working, because then what's the incentive?
Waive fees. I mean, what is the incentive? I don't know. Do we have to have an incentive? I mean,
I think we need an incentive to convince people, as some of the commenters have said, to become landlords. So I think that was why Jeff Adams originally came up with the concept of an FAR incentive. And I don't think anyone wants to see larger than a 0.6 FAR, because we're already hearing a lot of concern about large buildings. So I understand that's why we stepped back. And I think Marcy, you had a comment.
Well, I do think I'm hearing in the comments that there's a lot of misunderstanding about the way the FAR has been applied on the public benefit line. And I think it might be helpful for me to just go through some examples of how this would work. So I think there was a misunderstanding that in order to build an accessory dwelling unit, you have to sign up for the public benefit dwelling. That's not true. The proposal is you can build a single dwelling. Let's just say that the FAR, it's the reduced FAR. Now maybe that's not exactly the right number, but I just wanted to make sure people understand the concept. The number 0.46 from 0.6 may change. Maybe that's not the right number, but listen to this idea. So a single dwelling could be built within that FAR. No city hands in your pockets, no business, it's just straightforward like it is today. A single dwelling with an ADU could also be built within that. No public benefit dwelling responsibilities. What we have done though is by reducing the parking requirement for ADUs, we have made them more likely that we will see ADUs. And by removing the design review requirement, we're also making it more likely we'll see ADUs. Okay, so if you decide though that you'd like more FAR than whatever that number is, then you can provide you can sign on to the public benefit dwelling program, provide a single dwelling, and you get more FAR. And if you just design this public benefit dwelling ADU, you actually get the ADU exempted from your FAR. So you get 600 square feet, not counting FAR for the FAR. That's how that program works. So it's intended to be that getting FAR, additional FAR is an incentive to sign up for the public benefit dwelling program. Otherwise, if we don't have an FAR kind of give away, I don't know what incentive we do have for the public benefit dwelling.
Maybe Mike or Jay can speak to this, or Marcy, about grandfathering the current properties that are above 0.46, if they wanted to rebuild on the same footprint. Can you talk about the discussion, went on about that and whether or not that's viable?
There's already a provision in the zoning ordinance. And I have to admit, it's really confusing, and that's something that we talked about fixing as far as maybe we should look at quickly, but it's intended to allow people to rebuild their homes. Even if they were out of compliance before, if they can rebuild their homes. We just need to fix, there's one little ambiguity in that provision that needs to be taken out so that it's a guaranteed result.
But if I could just clarify that, it allows you to build what you have before.
Yeah, what you have before, you can rebuild your own.
But it does put new restrictions if people have not built yet.
It does, but you know, sorry, let's talk offline.
And I think that's the nature of code amendments.
Yeah.
At some point, if you want to move forward or make changes, yes, you're gonna have to change what was in the past, and new landowners not put different restrictions.
And I will note that one time it was probably 40%, and all those people that built their houses before it changed to 50 got screwed over. And the ones that built at 50% when it changed to 60 got screwed over. The reality is, we learn as we're going that our community needs to change with, you know, the population trends. And if that means we come back, yeah, some people might get a smaller house than they wanted, or may not get everything they wanted out of their house, but it's been the same throughout, in that, pre-existing use or non-conforming use provision. It says, we realize people are out there with homes that don't conform. We don't wanna hurt them at all, you know, and that is the intention of all of this. If your house doesn't conform after you're grandfathered in. Now, if you wanna make a change, then you have to.
I didn't understand the comment.
We definitely can have people reach out.
Yeah.
Definitely. So tonight is not the night to get that back and forth, but definitely there's conversation being had.
You know, it seems to me that, what I'm hearing is that most people, when they try to understand this proposed change, are thinking, you know, I wanna build one house. And they're not really thinking about the ADU or duplex. I wanna build one house, and it just feels like I've been told I can't build it as big as I could have before. It's that 0.6 down to 0.46 is really the math that people are thinking about. But I think Marcy's explanation helps shed a little bit of light. How can we build on that? Because I think that understanding needs to be made more public. Because I mean, as I read some of the things in there, if you really start looking at the effect of the benefits that you can get, you actually can get up to a 0.62 effectively. And so, but that doesn't come across. And I don't think it's come across for many people.
You know, people have an opportunity to be helpful, and maybe at that point there would be.
Sure. I mean,
Opportunity for more information.
I make a comment, this is one little comment.
Sorry.
This is a ridiculous way to have a meeting where you can't have any exchange back and forth.
Mr. Higgs, we've asked you several times.
Unfortunately, we have rules that we have to comply with for procedure. We're stuck. Do we have other comments on?
Well, I just wanted to, in deliberation with Mike on, non-conforming structure. There actually is a restriction on non-conforming structures, and that's 50% of the valuation of the home for years. So they may not be able to get. There's a pre-existing use too, go look at that, which also contemplates structures for a new, for a new use and. Can you clarify?
Yeah, it's just that those two are kind of confusing
Yeah.
when they work with one another, and that's definitely something that needs to be cleaned up just from an administrative perspective. The public, staff, everyone, so I think that section in particular, there's the non-conforming and there's a pre-existing, there's certain dates, and so somehow, some way, we have to make sure that whatever we do addresses that and very much clarifies this issue, because it's a key aspect to this. If something was to happen, that we want to be able to, in my mind, it's up to the plan commission and council, but if there was a fire and it was an act of God and something happened, then I think we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to rebuild to what they had previously. And I think it's real important that we make sure that we address that accordingly.
Yeah, Jay, I don't disagree with you. It is really confusing, but I really think the intention is to give people that, and we need to make sure the intention is clear. Yeah, that falls along the line of grandfather. And also, you know, Portland did their change to their housing. And I believe they put a moratorium on in my paper back, I was trying to find that in our meeting, and they would say, but no, I've heard about that. And so I don't know if that's something that we might want to consider when we get to the point of sending the city council, is that there would be a moratorium on taking effect. Because in fact, if it gets to city council approves it, there's 30 days, there's a 30-day window for that to take effect. And people that may have been resigning homes over the past year or so, they don't meet that 30-day deadline, they're gonna be having problems. So I don't know what a decent moratorium time would be, but I think we need to consider that and take that in our goal to the city council.
What do you think a reasonable phase in would be?
I've read in some searches that, you know, some people get 5 years, I think that's extremely long. I would think at least 12 months, a year, take it back that minimum 8 months to be able to turn around and move things ahead, to get to a permissible state of land, if they are in process already.
Steve?
And obviously council would make that decision in the end. But I think yes, it's 30 days, that's typically for an ordinance for it to take an effect. But I believe that there would be an ability to potentially extend the effective date as to when that ordinance could take into effect. So that would be something that we could work with the attorney on to just verify that instead of going with a quote unquote moratorium, just go with an effective date and maybe that gets extended out to a specific time period.
But would that be something you would recommend to city council?
I would say that would be, if the planning commission is thinking that, I would strongly make that type of recommendation to them.
So where are we in terms of whether we feel that this is something that we can decide tonight in terms of making a recommendation? Do we feel like we need more information?
Personally, I'd like to go over these documents, the proposed changes, again. You know, I think there's a lot there, a lot to digest, and I think that it might be premature for me to make any decisions this evening that are permanent. There are recommendations. I'd like the opportunity to go back through it, digest some of the comments that were online and that we put into this evening, and even come up with some ideas from myself or from others that may add to this document some different thoughts. So that's my take.
I would prefer to see that we probably should have time, take some time to review for ourselves, come back, make recommendations to the housing focus group and have another one at it.
So are you thinking you want to send it all the way back to the housing focus group?
Yeah, I think it would
Need more time. When we start, if there's continuance, one of the questions I just, Melissa, you could help me out on this a little bit. You know, the Measure 56 notice went out to everyone. Would we need to set a date certain for the next meeting if we were to continue this? Or would we just have to send another public notice out in terms of strictly the paper? But could you help me out with a little bit of understanding of a continuance on dates?
Yes, thanks, Steve. There's no more legally required notice that the city's required to send, but you do need to continue the public hearing to a date certain. And it could be 30 days or it could be 60 days. It's entirely up to you. This matter is before the Planning Commission, and so I'm a little bit hesitant to talk about sending something back to a working group. I think that the Planning Commission can certainly work on it and come back with recommendations to the City Council, but it is, you know, sort of before you all, I guess I would say. If I could just mention one other thing too, that Marcy touched on just a little bit, and I believe Commissioner Orloff and all of you know about, but the state legislature and the governor are very, very active in every session enacting a lot of complex legislation encouraging the development of housing. And that continues to apply to smaller and smaller cities each session. And so many cities who are considering these issues choose to move forward so that they are sort of in charge of their own destiny, rather than have the legislature come in next session, for example, and tell cities this is how you're going to do it. So I just wanted to sort of point out that that is happening on a weekly and monthly basis. The legislature also did create something new called the Housing Accountability and Production Office. That office doesn't consider any cities exempt from its purview and scrutiny of how cities are doing on addressing the housing shortage in our state. So I just wanted to leave you with those two thoughts.
Thanks, Melissa.
And then I got different dates as far as 3rd, 60, so whenever you guys wanna.
I would like us to keep this moving, so if you put your 30s and that, let's do that. Okay. What would our
So
30s?
that would be our next meeting, which would be on August 28th, correct? August 28th. Correct. August 28th.
Do I have a motion to continue this hearing until August 28th?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Tessa, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Orloff. Yes. Commissioner Matusek.
Yes.
Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Commissioner Bates.
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Yes.
Vice Chair Moore.
Yes. This meeting and this hearing is continued to the August 28th meeting.
May I just mention something real quick? So what that means for everyone in the public is just that, no action is being taken tonight. Typically for a zoning ordinance amendment, the planning commission makes recommendations and it has to go to the council for final action. At this evening, they heard the testimony, they've elected to continue it until our meeting on August 28th. You won't receive a specific notice again. So we're telling you now, and there'll be notice just in our typical city stuff, that the meeting's on August 28th.
That will be listed on the city's website along with the agenda for the 28th, right, Steve? So, and also any other information regarding the meeting on the 28th, so that you'll all be aware.
So the next item on our agenda is the tree report. Robert, give the tree report.
Okay, in the month of June, there was a total of 13 trees removed, 12 of which were related to construction, and of which was dead. There was replanting requirement for one, this was the size of the lots. And most of those trees were coming from 196 Wallace Lane, which was reviewed by the planning commission earlier this year.
Any questions in the tree report? Thank you, Robert. We will now be moving on to good of the order. Does anyone have items for good of the order? In that case, we will adjourn the meeting.